Hey everybody, it's Tactic Alex here with a PenCott Leatherneck gun painting video. You may remember me from my last video where I showed you how to paint a gun in PenCott Green Zone. Here is one example of a product I made with the PenCott Green Zone with it. So you can see it does fairly well. I'll put the link to that in my description below. And just another one to show you some updated models. So we're going to be taking a look at PenCott Leatherneck, which is what I'm wearing here. This is a tactical pullover from 0241tactical.com. I highly recommend them. They're very well built, and most importantly, you can get it in PenCott Leatherneck. This is a much more North American based camo, as you can see, with some of the brown colors instead of being the very deep, almost chocolatey browns of PenCott Green Zone. You get more of a reddish tan brown to match the soil around here. And the greens are more of a evergreen tree green, darker instead of the vibrant chlorophyll filled greens of PenCott Green Zone. So I've been looking forward to this for a while. I am going to show you how to paint it on my airsoft gun here. This is a Crytac Trident MK2, and I am going to first start off by taking off all the attachments. Then we're going to head outside and we'll get started. Before we take this outside, let's go over the supplies we're going to use. Blue painter's tape to mark off your gun. A sea sponge for your digital pattern. Acrylics. Charcoal. Sand dune. And English ivy. I have a clear matte finish to spray over your gun when it's all done. And for our base coat, I have Rust-Oleum nutmeg. I also have a little tray to mix in. This isn't important, you can use whatever you have laying around. So let's go outside, get this base coat put on. Okay, so here we are outside. I'm sorry for any background noise, but I'm not spray painting in my house. So our first and most important step is with blue painter's tape. You're going to paint off the parts on your gun that you don't want paint to get. Now, I really like my Crytac. It's a nice gun. I love the two-tone look of it. So what I did is I'm going to try to keep that two-tone look. Okay? I taped off a lot of the parts that had black on it. I'm going to leave this base here that I'm going to spray paint the colors of PenCott Leatherneck. Now, I recommend keeping a magazine in. If you don't want it colored, definitely tape it. Alright? I also took off the handguard because I want to paint this without getting this inside barrel painted. So I just put a little bit of protection here, and that should be good. I also plan on painting my stock as well, but I did take off the back butt plate just because this is rubber. I don't want to get any paint on it. So once you have these all good, what you're going to do is you are going to take your spray can. I'll start with the stock since it's probably the simplest. Make sure you shake it up a little bit. And just spray a nice light coat from, 6 to 9 inches away. There's a lot of little nooks and crannies, so make sure you come at it from multiple angles so you get everything covered. Okay, and then on to our next part. I'll do the front handguard, which this is a pretty nice color. If we mess up, I'm not going to be that disappointed. Now, excuse me, this has some angles that I have to let dry before I get this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this side dry a little bit, and then I'm gonna flip it over, get the other side. In the meantime, I'm gonna work on my gun. Okay, on to the last and scariest part. All right, we're gonna let this dry a little bit, and then we'll get on with our next step. Okay, so it is 24 hours later. It took this paint a little bit longer to dry, so I really wanted to make sure that that base coat was on here. So I moved back inside, and I'm going to work on the digital pattern now. So I'm gonna start off by taking my sea sponge, and I'm going to rip part of the sea sponge off so I can get that nice pattern. Oh, that was not enough. I found out that you kind of want it to be a decent length. If it's too short, it just looks like little splotches and you don't get that nice organic pattern. So I've been sticking to something around this size here. And we are going to use our English Ivy Green. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this acrylic, shake it up, squirt it on a little, I use a paper plate. You can use whatever. Maybe you have something better than this. And then you're going to take your sponge and you're going to dip it in the paint. Now I usually try to wipe away some of the excess because you want the pores. Pores are good. Pores gives you that natural pattern. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over the gun and we're going to just dab this. Sometimes we're going to dab it hard. Sometimes it's going to be soft. Angle it, different things. You want to get a very natural looking pattern. And there's a lot of the base coat on these patterns, so don't overdo it, okay? You could always add more later. But what I like to do is I like to go with the flow of the guns, and I like to think of spots that I want to kind of focus around. So let's start here. I'll start around the magwell, work my way forward. And don't forget to get various angles and do it at different pressures. I'm gonna have to stand up here to make sure I get a better pattern here. Okay. All right, I'm going to do the stock as well. All right, and I think that looks pretty good so far. For our next part, we're going to work on the charcoal undertones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a mixing bowl and I'm going to take some of my charcoal and I'm going to squirt it in there. Okay, definitely make sure it's charcoal. If it's too black, it's going to look black. The charcoal has a almost like a grayish blue hint or hue to it, to me at least. So you take your sea sponge, right, get a little bit of paint on there. Make sure that the pores of the sponge come through, because that's what gives you the digital pattern. If you don't have the pores, you might as well just use a paintbrush. So sometimes wipe paint around the edges until you get some pores. So now what we're going to do is, and I've done this with all my PenCott patterns, is once you have one coat down, you sort of follow along it. Don't cover it up. Don't do the exact same spots. Imagine it's dancing around the pattern. So let me show you here around the magwell. You can see you got the green around the outside. So sometimes you can overlap. So I'm going to overlap a little bit here with a light touch. Alright, I'm going to wipe a little bit of paint away. I feel like I got quite a bit on here. I want this to be a little bit lighter. And I'm just going to dance around that ever so lightly. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing up the handguard. Remember, it's okay to leave the base tan. There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, it's important that you do. And just go around your gun, making sure you're varying your splotch pressure. A lot of times, the more you do it, the better the pattern actually comes out towards the end. Alright, make sure you get all angles. Okay. And then that looks pretty good for now to me. So I'm going to turn this over, get the other side. Alright, and I'm going to let it dry, and then we'll come back for the next step. Our final step before we put our clear coat on, and probably our most delicate step, is going to be using our sand dune. And the reason why is if you look in this pattern, you can see these tiny little almost sandy looking spots. Very tiny, very tiny. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some sandstone. Honestly, I've been mixing colors and I think the sandstone is going to be the best. We're going to take a drop of it, put it in there. Okay, I don't mind overusing paint. This stuff's like $1. So there's our paint. And I'm going to take the smallest part of a sea sponge I can find. So I got this little dab here, right? I'm going to get that covered in paint, but then I'm going to really try to dry as much of the paint, or drag as much of the paint off here as possible. Okay, because I want these to be tiny, tiny little splotches. And if you look closely, it only really hits in the spots with the charcoal. So I'm just going to, like, each kind of area of charcoal, maybe 1 or 2 dabs within. So if you see this charcoal here, just very lightly. Nothing crazy. Okay. Follow some up here. Like I said, very, very lightly. This should be the least you have of anything on here. Okay, I'm barely touching. I'm just letting this basically fall on there. You can go a little bit in the green if you want, but I highly recommend you stick towards the charcoal to give it the better look that the PenCott actually has. Okay. I'm just ever so slightly touching this, ever so slightly. And then you drop it in your gray, and you got to get a new piece of a sponge. So, really small. And usually you want something with a lot of pores. So try to make sure it's flat and porous. Okay, I'm going to wipe most of the paint, try to get that off so it's just the edges. And just follow that gray. Okay. All right. I don't want to overdo it. I can always come back and mark it up later if I have to. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to flip over to the other side, do the other side, take a look at the whole thing, check at it, and then, yeah, I'll finish up with that. All right, so I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so I'm done. After I did what I showed you, I went outside, I took that clear coat of matte spray paint, sprayed it over it and let it dry. And then probably the most satisfying part is I took off the tape. Now I'm not going to show you that, but maybe one day I'll make a compilation. It'll be ASMR tape removal. But I want to show you the final product. Here is PenCott Leatherneck paint job on a Crytac Trident. I think it turned out pretty well. Once again, I would like to thank O241tactical.com for providing me with this wonderful tactical pullover in PenCott Leatherneck. I'm really excited to get out there and play with this. And also, I'd like to thank PenCott Camo for making such an awesome camouflage pattern and totally supporting these things that I'm doing. So make sure to follow them on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at tactic_Alex. One more thing. The color palette for Leatherneck is the same color palette for Marpad. So maybe if you ever want to try to do Marpad on your gun, you could use these same colors. You might have to change up the color or the sponge pattern a little bit or some way replicate the digital design. But if you do, I'd love to see it. Let me know in the comments below.